In IDEA's General Ledger, a new option has been added to the General Ledger Trial Balance Report. The screen looks the same, all except for this new addition, this by vendor option. The other options still work as they did previously, but when using the by vendor option in conjunction or not with the other options on the screen, it will group and subtotal by vendor. So if we execute the report in the original format, it will display on the screen the original format of the report. Now this report is configured to report on a select few accounts for the current year source USD. And it displays in this format, which is the original format for the trial balance report. If we use the same parameters but add the by vendor option and execute the report, it will again display on the screen. But now we have the report formatted and grouped by vendor. We have the same activity and balances, but it is grouped by vendor. Here we have the first grouping is the activity that has no vendor, and then we have groupings and subtotals by vendor. If we export to Excel, we get the same type of format as the standard report, but the table is a little bit different and the balances are by vendor. So this is what the report to Excel looks like. Just a dump of the temp table which drives the report. And one thing to keep in mind when using the by vendor option, in contrast to the way that the standard trial balance works without the by vendor option, it derives the balances by summary values stored in the database. But when using by vendor, we have to be able to filter it by the vendor, which means that we have to get the individual transactions. So we have to find the transactions in our journal transaction definitions that are related to the segments for which we are reporting on the trial balance. In this case, we have our current year source USD. So one important thing to keep in mind is it's using these transactions. So it has to be able to tell what transactions build the beginning balance, meaning what transactions took place before this. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that in our segment definitions, we have the prior segments set up. Here we have the prior segment is segment 30. And if we go down to 30, it is the prior year actual source USD. And if you have multiple prior year activity, you always have to make sure. In this case, we only have one prior year, so there is no prior segment. If you have multiple prior years, you have to make sure that that prior segment is filled in for each of the segments, so we can identify what segments precede the segment in order to build the beginning balance. Now, if we have the year-end roll rolls off the transaction activity and we don't store that anymore, the beginning balance could be compromised by that balance that we have rolled off. And in that case, an adjustment may have to be made for the vendor beginning balance in order to get the accurate beginning balance in the report. So those are things to keep in mind with the by vendor trial balance. And that's how it works.